Biden's unwavering support toward Israel's brutal siege of Gaza has had a pretty massive impact on his support among Arab Americans, which is something incredibly concerning for a president who just barely won in the swing states. Now, a poll by the Arab American Institute shows that now just 23% of Arab Americans identify as Democrats due to Biden's handling of this war. Now, this is the first time a majority reported that they do not support Democrats since the Institute began tracking party identification in 1996. Now, don't get it twisted. They definitely do not side with the GOP either. Those identifying as independents rose to 31%, the highest it's ever been. And there are good reasons for why they just don't want to be identified as Democrats anymore. Look, we're not silly. We know what Trump has done to our communities, says Amir Tibon, the president of the Dearborn-based New Generation for Palestine. But when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, he continues, the policies are basically the same, except when Trump does it, you get some pushback from the Democratic Party. You know, because the partisan squabbles are way more important than doing the right thing. If Trump wants to do something, Democrats have an issue with it. But then they'll turn around and do the same thing when they're in power. It's pretty gross, and Arab Americans are realizing that now. Now, making matters worse for Biden in his quest for electoral victory is this. The same poll found that only 17% of Arab American voters say they will vote for Biden in 2024, a staggering drop from 59% in 2020. Now look, Biden obviously needs to win states like Michigan in order to be the victor of the general election. But things are not looking good because of the fact that there's a massive Arab population residing in Michigan. The poll results are likely to increase concerns among Democrats about Biden's standing with Arab Americans heading into 2024, particularly in Michigan, where roughly 277,000 Arab Americans call home, and Biden won in 2020 by just 155,000 votes. So if they decide, we're gonna sit this one out, we're not gonna vote for the guy who has repeatedly justified the brutal bombardment of Gaza, which has led to thousands of innocent civilian deaths. Now, the smaller Arab population or the smaller Arab American populations in Pennsylvania and Georgia were also larger than Biden's margins of victory there. All three states are ones Biden flipped after Trump won them in 2016. And remember, Biden's very likely to go up against Trump again. And if he needs to rely on those Arab American votes in order to win the election, things are not looking good for him. And look, it is not just Arabs who are now speaking out against Joe Biden. Zogby, a decades-long member of the Democratic National Committee, notes that the shift away from the Democratic Party among Arab Americans can be seen across the board. Among the old and the young, the naturalized citizens and the native-born Americans, as well as among Catholics, Orthodox Christians, and Muslims. The community is feeling a certain sense of cohesion, and Joe Biden and Israel brought them together, he says. Additionally, a Data for Progress poll found that 66% of Americans support a ceasefire in Gaza because Americans are good people. And our government, unfortunately, increasingly is not representative of what we want. And I really hope that the global community understands that, because as you see press conference after press conference featuring, various State Department officials providing cover for Israel's brutality, I don't want anyone to make the mistake in the global community that the United States consists of a giant population of people, the majority of whom are in favor of ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip. We are not. Again, 66% want a ceasefire. And it's important to also note that conflating these Americans with anyone who has made justifications for Hamas and its brutal and disgusting terrorist attacks is a liar. Two things can be true. You can be against what Hamas did, as I am, as many people in the United States happen to be, while also seeing what the IDF is doing in the Gaza Strip and standing against that as well. That's where I'm at, for a whole host of reasons. Other than the immorality of what's currently going on, long term, this is not gonna keep Israel safe. And I worry about what this means for Israeli civilians in the long run. But let's get back to the polling. And more importantly, let's get back to what previous administrations did when there was fighting among Israelis and Palestinians, because I was pretty shocked to learn that back in 2002, George W. Bush of all people, George W. Bush, a noted war criminal, okay, actually decided to speak out against some of Israel's military operations and the high Palestinian civilian death count that resulted from some of them. So Bush issued one of the sharpest rebukes against Israel today. This is a New York Times piece from July 23rd, 2002, denouncing as heavy-handed the attack that killed a Hamas leader and expressing regret over the loss of innocent life. So I'm gonna give you Ari Fleischer's statement in just a moment, but it's really important for you all, before I get to it, to keep in mind that the IDF bombed the largest refugee camp in Gaza both yesterday and today. This was a refugee camp in Jabalia. At least 50 people have reportedly died as a result of that bombing. 50, at least, it's likely more. Keep that number in mind as I continue with these quotes. This heavy-handed action does not contribute to peace, said the president's chief spokesman, Ari Fleischer. This message will be conveyed to Israeli authorities, and the United States regrets the loss of life. Already a strong statement, but get a load of this. He continues, or actually the New York Times continues, at least 14 other people, including several children, were killed in the missile attack that killed Salah Shehadeh, a founder and the top commander of Hamas's military wing. Scores of others were wounded. So the Bush administration apparently had enough of a conscience to find it reprehensible and immoral for Israel to carry out a strike that apparently targeted one Hamas commander, but ended up killing 14 additional Palestinian civilians. They had a problem with that. You can't even get the Biden administration to put out a single statement about the disgusting bombing of a refugee camp both yesterday and today in Jabalia. It is amazing to me. This is the Bush administration. Like, just let that sink in. But I'm not done yet, there's more. Fleischer said that the Israeli operation was a deliberate attack on the site, knowing that innocents would be lost in the consequences of the attack. They were against it, they spoke out against it. Asked how the administration could be so sure that Israel knew that civilians were in the building, you know what Ari Fleischer said? He replied, quote, "These were apartment buildings that were targeted." It's really depressing to see that our government's morality devolved even further since the Bush administration. That is so incredibly depressing. And we can also give Ronald Reagan credit for his willingness to hold Israel accountable as well. And by the way, actually real quick, let's go back to 2002. Let's go back to 2002 when Israel did what they did in taking out that Hamas commander while also simultaneously killing 14 other innocent civilians. Did Israel feel safer after that? Did that end the war? You see how this keeps happening over and over and over and over and over again? How does this keep anyone safe? Hamas still thriving after taking out that commander in 2002, but they're gonna use the same strategies over again. And we're all supposed to sit here and pretend that this is gonna work. It's not gonna work. Now let's get to Reagan. In addition to not vetoing UN resolutions, which the US loves to do now, by the way, Reagan took several actions that many in Israel and the United States perceived as anti-Israel. For example, on June 7th, 1981, less than 6 months after Reagan took office, Israel launched a surprise bombing raid on the Iraqi nuclear reactor in Osrak and in doing so violated the airspace of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. Reagan not only supported UNSC Resolution 487, which condemned the attack, but he also criticized the raid publicly and suspended the delivery of advanced F-16 fighter jets to Israel. Kind of incredible. I mean, these are two Republican presidents who apparently didn't have any problem with condemning some of the military missions and actions taken by the IDF. In August of 1982, I'm not done yet, obviously, when Israeli forces advanced beyond southern Lebanon and began shelling the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, in Beirut, Reagan responded with an angry call to the Israeli Prime Minister, Menachem Begin, demanding a halt to the operation. The Biden administration can't be bothered. There is no red line. We support them no matter what they want to do, regardless of how counterproductive the military actions are, regardless of how many innocent civilian lives are lost. All we hear is the same talking points regurgitated at us over and over again as if we're morons. Israel has a right to defend itself. Yes, true. They do have a right to defend themselves. They don't have a right to carry out ethnic cleansing, though. They don't have the right to commit war crimes. Oh, well, what could we do? Hamas was using human shields. That's not a justification to just bomb refugee camps, mosques, hospitals, churches. Not an excuse. Just like it wouldn't be an excuse if our government carried out these same crimes. We spoke out against it when it was happening in the Middle East by the United States government and the military. And I'm not gonna pretend as though Israel should get special treatment and we should pretend as though everything they're doing is okay because they have the right to defend themselves. No, if I'm willing to criticize my own government for carrying out war crimes, you better believe I'm going to aggressively and forcefully do the same when it comes to our allies when we're funding their war. And if that offends people, go ahead and get offended. It's apparently something I love to do here on this show. But you're always gonna get straight talk from me. And what Israel is doing is wrong. We need a ceasefire now.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.